World leaders are already reacting to the emergence of President Trump for a second time, and we have some details of that in this report.
Africa, President Bola Tinubu has congratulated President Donald Trump on his election as the 47th President of the United States of America. In a statement, President Tinubu says he looks forward to strengthening economic ties between Nigeria and the United States, as well as the promotion of peace between both nations amid the tackling of global challenges. Beyond Nigeria, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Hungary's Viktor Orban have been among the first world leaders to congratulate the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on his victory. Mr. Netanyahu described Donald Trump's win as history's greatest comeback, adding that his return to office offers a new beginning for America. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who was the first and only EU leader to back him in 2016, described his election as a much-needed victory for the world. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says he looks forward to working with Donald Trump in the years ahead. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz congratulated Trump, adding that Germany and the US have for a very long time successfully worked together to promote prosperity and freedom on both sides of the Atlantic. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, also congratulated Donald Trump on his victory, saying he was ready to work together with him just as before, with respect and ambition for more peace and prosperity. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says Mr. Trump's leadership will again be key to keeping the military alliance strong. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on X, "I appreciate President Trump's commitment to the peace through strength approach in global affairs. This is exactly the principle that can practically bring just peace in Ukraine closer." The spokesperson of the Russian government, Dmitry Peskov, says he is not aware of the president's plan to congratulate Mr. Trump on the election because the U.S. is, quote, "an unfriendly country," end quote. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, in her congratulatory message to Trump, said the EU and the US were more than just allies. Italian Prime Minister has also congratulated Mr. Trump on his victory.
Professor Babatunde Babawale is a professor of political economy and international relations. Thank you for joining us on the program this evening. Donald Trump did not only have more than the required 270 electoral votes, this time is also leading with the popular vote. So what do you consider the significant factors in this election?
Thank you very much for having me. Olatunde Babawale. I think what I consider to be significant factors in Trump's victory are the fact that he exploited what I call the base instinct in the people, especially in terms of his scary or scaremongering tactics when he campaigned about immigration and his promise to ensure that he did the most massive deportation in history in America against undocumented immigrants, largely because he raised a lot of issues about people eating cats and dogs. He raised issues about immigrants that are undocumented, causing a lot of violence. All of those appeal to the base instinct of the people who felt that their problems could be attributed to the influx of immigrants, which I think is not entirely correct. The second point has to do with the fact that there is, in actual fact, a problem with inflation. Prices of groceries in the U.S. are high, and though inflation is not at a runaway level, it is something that Americans find rather uncomfortable. And when Donald Trump preached against the inflationary problem that they are confronted in America, it appealed to the people. And I think this is one of the reasons why he recorded that victory.
Absolutely, Prof. He just simply asks them, do you think your life is better today than it was 4 years ago? And with inflation, the answer is very clear for everyone to see. But let's explore U.S. global relations under this new dispensation. How will the Trump presidency impact, for instance, on the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, considering what has been a significant deterioration of the U.S.-Russia relations over the years? If I can possibly just get a reaction from the Russian government, the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, was asked why President Putin hasn't congratulated President Trump yet. And here's what he said: "Let's not forget what we are talking about, an unfriendly country that is both directly and indirectly involved in the war against our state." It seems Putin and Trump aren't as close friends as many of the world like to think it. Right, Prof?
It is difficult to reach that conclusion yet. Putin is a master of mind games. And I think if you look at what he did during the electioneering campaign, during these elections in America, he played a lot of mind games. He's been reported to have said he was going to support Kamala Harris. In fact, announced that he was supporting her, which was a kind of paradox. Secondly, there are reports about some attacks on, some fake videos circulating about so-called rigging of elections, which were traced to the Russians. So what I'm saying, therefore, is that it is difficult to say whether the relationship between Trump and Putin have gone frosty. And don't forget that when Donald Trump was asked during this campaign whether he had spoken to Putin since he left office, he avoided the question completely, meaning that he probably had spoken to him. Now, what am I saying here? What I'm saying here is that, yes, it is true traditionally Russia and America are rivals. They are likely to remain so in the game of power and control of global politics and economy. However, you recall that the most important dispute at issue here has to do with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Now, President-to-be Donald Trump promised he was going to resolve the conflict within 24 hours. How he's going to do that, nobody knows.
It's very simple, Prof. I think his idea is to not give a cent or a dollar to Ukraine, and automatically the war will end. Do you envisage that will definitely end this war?
I'm not sure whether it will end the war, but it will affect the war in several ways. I suspect that Ukraine will not have as much of the support in terms of monetary support and military aid that it used to receive from Russia. And that itself will have implications for the relationship with NATO. Don't forget that Donald Trump is not a multilateralist when you talk in terms of diplomacy, international diplomacy. He's an isolationist who believes that America should lock itself within its walls and be largely unconcerned about what happens to people outside. And that in itself is dangerous for the world, given the strategic position of America and foreign nature of politics at the global level.
Time will tell, Prof, if we'll see the Trump administration continue to impose sanctions on Russia, similar to what has been implemented since the annexation of Crimea in 2014. But I'd like us to quickly speak to how this presidency will affect geopolitical concerns in places like the Middle East, right? Trump's presidency's influence on Israel-Gaza conflict, for instance. He has a strong support for Israel, similar to previous administrations. What do you think is going to happen differently?
For me, Trump is a very consistent, almost uncompromising supporter of Israel. He was the one that moved the capital to Jerusalem during his first incarnation. So I suspect that that support will continue. But I also think that this is victory may further embolden Israel in its truculence and warmongering. I hope it does not, or I hope Trump does not insist on giving such unconditional, unrestrained support to Israel in order to ensure that the world is safe from war. But one thing I have noticed, which may happen at the end of the day, it doesn't seem to me like Trump wants war at the international level. It may use some kind of some bravado or braggadocio, but I don't think it will encourage war to happen. But of course, what may happen unconsciously if he continues giving Israel the nod to do what it's like in the Middle East. So he said that he was going to end the conflict. I think we are waiting to see how he's going to do it. But it's a very complicated issue. He has not committed himself to a two-state solution like others have done.
Indeed,
so I don't know if America under him is going to insist in pursuit of that line of foreign policy. It's a situation that is hazy, that is unclear, that is at the moment inchoate.
Prof, I have just about 2 more minutes, and I want to squeeze in 2 questions before we go. There are concerns about the America-Africa relations under the Trump presidency. You remember the shithole controversy, and he's saying America first. It's about making America great again. What is the impact of this America first policy on Nigeria's economic and political interest, for instance?
I think that we've enjoyed some cordial relationship with the U.S. since our independence in 1960 in the area of bilateral relations on issues of security, on issues of trade, health, security, and humanitarian issues, economic growth, and of course, democracy and human rights protection. I think these are areas where we have cooperated at the level of cultural relations. We have also exchanged some a very cordial relationship as well. But my fear is that in the course of the campaign, Africa did not feature, except when it derisively referred to Congo. So I'm not sure that we're on the priority list of President Trump. We have never been on the priority list of the U.S., but at least I have not seen him make any commitment to Africa. However, if we look at the U.S. export to Nigeria in 2022, standing at about 3.4 billion, it is indeed America to further deepen the relationship between us so that we can become maybe the major export destination of the U.S. in sub-Saharan. As at 2022, we were the second. If Trump still wants to make America great, he needs the support of Nigeria, especially given our own strategic positioning in the West African region and Africa at large.
We're looking forward to that and see how Nigeria can also take advantage of it. Quickly before we go, there are talks about the significance of the electoral college system in America, where voters go out not necessarily to vote the president, but to vote electors. Do you think it is of so much significance that the African continent can buy this idea themselves?
There are too many pitfalls with the electoral college system. For me, it's just an indication of the tyranny of the minority and giving the people the illusion that they are electing president, when actually it's a handful of people who constitute themselves into the electoral college and are called electors who eventually elect the American president in the name of the people. And that's why there has always been a contradiction between the popular vote and the electoral vote. Recall that in 2016, when Donald Trump contested with Hillary Clinton won the popular vote and Donald Trump won the electoral vote and Donald Trump won the election. It is only now that we are seeing Donald Trump going away with the trophy for both the popular vote and the electoral vote. I will not recommend it because it defies what democracy actually preaches. Democracy is said to be government of the people. And what we have is the people investing their power, their voices, their authority in a few individuals who have the right to use it. In fact, they are not constitutionally bound to go one way or the other. So I think the lesson in the Americans is that for democracy in every country, we must devise a system that works for us. There is no single format for democracy. There is no formula for democracy. Every formula that will be applied must be relevant to the circumstances and the realities of the situation that is defined.
We have completely run out of time. Professor Olatunde Babawale, Professor of Political Economy and International Relations with the University of Lagos. Thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.